The world is bad and only getting worse. Today's multiple wars lead to nuclear war after an economic recession, high inflation, elevated interest rates, presidential election uncertainty, and the specter of artificial intelligence totally bringing an eventual world apocalypse. What about all that? Or is that unlikely and it only seems like the world is getting worse? This dangerous and uncertain world that you and I are living in. By the end of this video, I am going to pinpoint philosophically just when and why it's all coming to an end. I expect that this could give you an insight that you won't get anywhere else. Hi, I'm Keith Weinhold, the Get Rich Education founder, Forbes Real Estate Council member, and longtime real estate investor. Since the day that you and I were born, we have both lived in a perpetually unsafe and uncertain world, seemingly filled with danger, but it was more precarious for our ancestors. They constantly had to fend off grim threats from the elements, famines, battles, plagues, and predators. Sheesh! Today we'd think it's an existential crisis if we turned on the faucet and didn't have an infinite amount of clean water, or if the Wi-Fi was slow for 15 minutes. People act like their weekend is ruined when they have to reset a password. So understand how good life is. And in today's world, if we wanted to make investment decisions with a high degree of political and economic certainty, we need to wait until that were reached. Well, then we'd be sitting on the sidelines like reprobate slackjaws for the rest of our lives. Just since back in 2020, we could always look outside of our comfy, cushy bubble if we wanted to and pinpoint some uncertain and unsafe circumstance or situation. In 2020, it was health crisis fears. 2021, it was recession fears. 2022, rising interest rate fears. 2023, multiple war fears. In 2024, watch for presidential election fears. In 2025 and 2026, mounting fears that AI will destroy all of humanity. Let's get more perspective on the resilience of humanity and how we keep living better lives while constantly fending off crises and perils. I mean, it's constantly something. Consider that just during this young 21st century, we've already had the Y2K bug, Bush versus Gore election uncertainty, the 2001 dot-com recession, the September 11th terrorist attacks, the Iraq War, the invasion into Afghanistan, Hurricane Katrina, the Great Recession with the 2008 mortgage meltdown, the Arab Spring. Remember Trump's surprise 2016 presidential win? It was a shock when he beat Hillary Clinton. Jarring events at the Capitol on the 6th of January a few years back. Real estate's mortgage loan forbearance and eviction moratorium, the George Floyd riots, and California and Maui wildfires. Okay, all that. And right there, I was only talking about things that involve the United States, just one nation out of 193 world nations, and I just kept it confined to this century. So if you want to be scared by the negatives, you can always find something, but the problem is more people are bringing it to you. So realize that problems aren't getting more severe. Most problems are actually getting more mild. All right, well, there are some things that are worse now, like school shootings. You could always find something. And then there are some things that are better, like the phone in your pocket. I mean, before this century, we had complete world wars, not just wars between two nations. The Dust Bowl, Cuba's Bay of Pigs invasion and Cuban Missile Crisis that could have led to a nuclear apocalypse that completely destroyed the entire world. An assassination attempt of our president, Reagan. Before that, JFK was shot in the neck and killed, our sitting president. These are definitely all tragedies, and I'm only scratching the surface. I could go on and on like this. Well, in the future, you actually don't want uncertainty to stop, because the only way that uncertainty stops is if the world ends. There is relative clarity today compared to the past. Today, of course, there are some economic problems. And again, if there weren't economic problems, then there'd be no economy. American employment is strong. GDP is growing. Our currency is fairly stable compared to the rest of the world. And today, the US economy is outperforming everybody in the world. So in a world that some feel is uncertain and dangerous, just consider the relative sense of certainty and safety that you have today from a historic perspective. When we discuss wars, as bad as they are, when they do happen, they're never on US soil. Can you imagine how an attack on US soil would look? I mean, how would that even sound? Like, the enemy has destroyed and taken control of Charleston, and they blew up Savannah, and next they're moving inland to decimate Atlanta. I mean, that's so unlikely that your mind isn't even conditioned to think that way. We are so insulated from a direct war here in America. So all of these real adverse situations I've discussed are periods where action takers have successfully invested through them. Sheesh, in May of 2007, which was right before real estate prices fell off a cliff, I bought a $530,000 fourplex building, which was my most expensive property ever at that time. Maybe that would cost $800 or $900K today. And by the way, it's not a great photo, but here's a picture of that actual building that I owned and bought in 2007 before trading it up for a larger apartment building, 7841 Mayfair Drive in Anchorage, AK. Well, I held that building for just 6 years and then came out profitably on the other side. Yes, from 2007 to 2013. And half of that time was during the worst financial crisis of you and I's lifetime, and that crisis was actually centered on real estate. All right, so I'd let you know, I'd share with you when and how the condition of this unsafe and certain world that we live in will change. And as we work toward that answer, I think you're already getting a clearer picture. So if the world is really a better place now than, say, 30 years ago and 100 years ago, then why does it just seem like there's more bad news now compared to 30 years ago? That is because today media is more fractured and competitive. Almost no one used the internet 30 years ago. From YouTube videos to podcasts to social media reels, there are more people than ever out there competing for your attention, and that's a number that's growing exponentially. Professional grifters compete for your attention by using fear. That's the easiest way to pull you in and get your attention. And you can make the case that US real estate has never been safer. Building codes are bulletproof. Loans are strictly underwritten and they're government backed. Third-party property inspections, that's normalized due diligence. An arm's length appraisal, that acts as an independent hedge against buyers overpaying. And all that, every one of those things are done and can be verified before you even buy a property. Investors keep thriving despite a world that will perpetually be dangerous and uncertain. As real estate investors, you know, we actually have 3 big, almost complete certainties on our side, despite this less certain outer world. And those 3 certainties are long-term inflation, that property values cannot fall to zero, and the fact that someone will always pay you to put a roof over their head. So with more and more media out there that use attention-grabbing words like crash and collapse in the headlines, understand that's how they get you to click and then become fearful. And I've used words like that in a headline before, but then the actual material that I generate within that, it dispels that very notion. I mean, anything could happen, and the greatest risk is often sitting on the sidelines and doing nothing. Then you're making less of yourself than you could have. So the timing on when the world becomes safe enough and certain enough, that happens inside everyone's mind once we understand this perspective. For the timeline on the how and the when, it's whenever you and I decide. It's a decision. Uncertainty is expensive. That creates opportunity cost. This is a call to do your investing due diligence, understand why the motivation to constantly scare you away is there, and then boldly move forward anyway. That is your decision, and that's good news. You have the autonomy inside of you to make decisions in spite of an always unsafe and uncertain world. If you're looking for anything else to anchor onto in helping decide what's right for you, your investing, your health, your family, I'll leave you with this. Security is the opposite of opportunity, and safety is the opposite of freedom. I hope that this long-term perspective helped you today. Go ahead and leave a like if you enjoyed anything here. If you want more, I also host the weekly Get Rich Education podcast, which is different from this show. That way you can listen to me on the go with your Get Rich Education mobile app on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. I'm Keith Weinhold. I'll see you in the next video. You can watch this one next.